morning, everyone. So today I will speak about fair fun and how at fair fun we want to make funds as ethical as possible. Funds that actually are built to last. Today I will dig into the technical aspects to see how open source plays a crucial role on it. Fairphone is a purpose-driven social enterprise that puts people and planet at the core of everything that we do. Who am I? So I'm Agnes Crepet. I'm French, as you guess, and I'm the head of IT and software longevity at Fairphone. I've been working here since 2018. And as you see in the picture, I'm also involved in some collectives, tech activist collectives. First of all, in Mixit, a tech conference in Lyon dedicated to ethic in techs, and also Duchesse France, which is actually a collective which promotes women in tech. So, I speak about phones today. So, let's look at how smartphones. What is the hidden side of these brilliant devices, often with a pure design, like they were completely innocent? Who knows this? Who has a similar drawer or box at home? A lot of people have unused electronic devices at home. And these devices are part of the electronic waste, what we call the e-waste, which is actually one of the big issues of the electronic industries. And let's look at those numbers. It is a bit scary, but trust me, the rest of the presentation is probably more optimistic. So let's start with those numbers. Every year, about 1.5 billion phones are sold. So there are already more smartphones in the world than people. Crazy. On average, each phone is only used for a bit more than 2 years for the Android ecosystem. And finally, less than 20% of all phones are properly recycled. The rest sits discards in drawers, landfills, or we don't even know what happens to them. So if you combine these three numbers, you quickly see why e-waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world. So the latest information that we have about e-waste from 2019, if I'm not wrong, shows that almost 45 millions of tons of e-waste are produced every year, between 40 and 50. Unfortunately, this problem is invisible to many of us in the Western countries. And why? Because a large part of the e-waste ends in Africa and Asia. Let's now look at the broader environmental impacts of the digital industry. This industry represents almost 4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And the estimate is that it could even double by 2025. To measure its environmental impact, the industry is mainly interested in CO2 emission. This approach is okay, but it does have some limits. Just focusing on greenhouse gas emissions or carbon footprints is very simplistic. It often eclipses other pollution, such as water quality of chemical discharges linked to the mining industry, ecotoxicity, human toxicity, etc. So, on top of those 3.8% of greenhouse gas emission, the digital industry represents 0.2% of the water consumption, 5.5% of the electric consumptions, and 4.2% of the primary energy. The primary energy includes the natural gas, the hydraulic energy, the wind or geothermic energy, etc. All those factors are taken into consideration in what we call the life cycle analysis, a thorough methodology to evaluate the true environmental impact of a product through its whole life cycle, from the raw extraction for a smartphone to the disposal of the phone. And not only being focused on the carbon footprint, but also on the water consumption, the ecotoxicity, the abiotic depletion, etc. I will explain to you what is abiotic depletion just after. And not only being focused on the usage of the product. The steps like the production, the disposal are also taken into consideration. And if you look at just the production, meaning the raw extraction, and the manufacturing, it represents almost 75% of the total impact of a phone. So that's huge. I was speaking about the abiotic depletion just before. So abiotic depletion refers to the depletion of the non-living abiotic resources, such as minerals. And you see in the picture a ore of cobalt. And we need minerals to produce phones, on average 50 per phone. And we can easily forget how precious and limited those resources are. Let's keep in mind just this number. We need 70 kilograms of raw materials for a single phone of even less than 300 grams. That's crazy. And why? Because you cannot just find pure cobalt in the nature. You need different techniques to excavate ores of gold, ores of coppers, etc., ores of cobalt. And then you have to do several steps, like refining. If you see this picture, this is a picture from the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is a mine of copper. And the blue water that you see here is not a mountain lake. This is just full of acid. And acid is needed for the extraction of and the transformation of those minerals. The mining sector is one of the most polluting among all the other sectors like the textile industry. And what I will say about the smartphone is also true then for the electric cars, the solar panels, and the wind turbines. Something quite close to fair fun, but the digital industry also has a human cost. From the mines to the factories, the entire industry's supply chain is tainted by unsafe, inhuman working conditions, and in some cases, even child labor. Child labor in mining is most commonly found is in what we call the ASM, artisanal and small-scale mines. And just speaking about DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, you have approximately 40,000 kids working in the artisanal mines. And also, one of the big reasons of all those inhuman conditions are the conflicts. We speak about conflict minerals. Conflict minerals are resources which directly or indirectly fund conflicts. The most prominent contemporary example has been the eastern provinces of the DRC, where various armies, rebel groups profited from mining while contributing to violence and people exploitation. But you know what? Let's take a step back for a moment. How did everything start? How did Fairphone start? What you can see in the middle of this picture is a stone of cobalt. Fairphone began as an awareness campaign in 2010, so a long time ago, on conflict minerals in consumer electronics. So we were not a company, we were just a group of activist people focusing on this awareness. And then we quickly noticed that understanding all this topic, all the stuff that goes into the smartphone was next to impossible. The supply chain is too complex and intransparent to an outsider. So the obvious next step was to become an insider. And this marked the birth of Fairphone as a social enterprise. So in 2013, we became a social enterprise with one objective. I really like this tagline. To produce a cool phone that put human values first. And in mid-2013, with no prototype, no customer base, no employee with industry experience, and limited working capital, the staff of 6 people launched a crowdfunding campaign via our website, not even using a crowdfunding website, quite known now. And they expected to pre-sell a maximum of 5,000 funds, and they were wrong. In November 2013, Fairphone had pre-sold 25,000 funds, non-existing funds, at the price of 325 euros. The company, the year after, had pre-sold in total and shipped, actually, more important, 60,000 smartphones. So that's huge. And our mission isn't changed since the start. By establishing a market for ethical electronics, we motivate the entire industry to act more responsibly. And how can we get this mission done? We have a clear idea about that. This is our theory of change. So first of all, we raise awareness, like I do today, to explain to you a bit the complexity behind the supply chain of smartphones. We build funds to learn about this complexity, and we want to tell the story. Secondly, we innovate. We try to push to the industry the solutions to act more responsibly. So I will speak later on about modularity in a phone, how we can include more fair materials, etc. And we invite all the players in the industry to join the initiatives. We don't want to be alone in that game. So, for example, the Fair Cobalt Alliance that we launched 2 years ago in the DRC is a good example. Why? Because Tesla and even recently Google Pixel have joined the initiative. So, what we do actually? So, we identified 4 major approaches to tackle the existing problems. And we call them the 4 impact areas that we have. So first of all, the fair materials. We use as much as possible responsible and recycled materials in our phones. We are, for example, the first smartphone brand to use fair trade gold. We want also to have fair factories, so we improve the working conditions for the people that actually make and assemble our smartphones in the factories, mostly in China. And for example, we are the first electronics company to install a living wage to the factory workers. Today, I will focus a bit more on the longevity because this is my daily work at Fairphone. So all our phones are specially made to last as long as possible and to be used as long as possible. And of course, reuse and recycling. This is about circularity. We stimulate reuse and recycling of phones. For example, we have take-back programs. And today, as I said, I want especially to zoom in on longevity, the area that I know. So let's look at the phones that we built so far. So this is our, let's say, Fairphone family. So with Fairphone 1, we wanted to incorporate conflict-free minerals. So this is what we do. This is what we did also at that time with tin and tungsten. And we also sold spare parts separately to enable consumers to repair their phones at home. But with Fairphone 2 in 2015, we managed to really facilitate the repairability with what we call the modularity. So we put together some components in some modules. And for example, if you break your phone, since Fairphone 2, you're able to change it. You just have to order a new screen on our web shop, and then you can change it at home. So with Fairphone 3, we improved, of course, the modularity. We increased the number of fair materials, of course, because we were still focused on the 4K area. And we made a profit for the first time in 2020. Our latest device is Fairphone 4, and with Fairphone 4, we introduced the 5-year warranty, the e-waste neutral, so that means that for each phone sold, we take one old phone back. And of course, Fairphone 4 includes more fair materials, more recycled materials, and the working conditions in mines and factories are improved. Longevity. So this is the heart of the presentation today. So longevity of our smartphone is key to our mission because it helps to lower the demand of new devices. This in turn reduces the need of resources and thus the human and ecotoxicity, the emission of greenhouse gases, etc. And to make the phone last longer, we need two things to come together: the hardware. The hardware needs to be repairable. So this is why we introduce the modularity. I will speak about that just after. But also the software. The software must stay up to date. Just a quick look at the modularity. So from Fairphone 2 onwards, we iterated on our unique modular design and improve stability and repairability. So we sell modules on our webshop, as I said before. You can easily swap out the battery without any tools, and for the other modules, you can replace them with only a standard screwdriver. Fairphone 2 and Fairphone 3 even had camera upgrades. So after 1 year or 2 years after the launch of the phone, it was doable for the users to change the camera if they wanted to have a better camera. All our modular models have a high fixed repairability score, quite high, 10 out of 10, and we have also a very high score for the new French repairability index. And this index also takes into account the availability and cost of spare parts. Now, let's speak about software. A study by the European Commission estimates that 20% of users change their smartphone because of a lack of software support. And what makes the software become obsolete? First point, new features that a user expects are missing. Second point, any software can have issues that need to be fixed, so you need a fix. For example, some apps could crash or the Wi-Fi is not working properly with your new router at home, etc. But also, the security vulnerabilities are not patched. So you need security updates on your phone. Because if you don't have them, you could not launch your bank app, for example. And the releaser of the software is a manufacturer. So for us, this is Fairphone, this is us. We are responsible for updates. Let's have a look at how maintaining software of a smartphone. Several parties are involved in this software supply chain, if I can call it like that. For Fairphone, we have mostly Google and Qualcomm. Why? Because Google is behind Android. Google releases a new version of Android every year. Each version gets security fixes from Google, but for a limited number of years. After this time, the device can continue receiving security updates only if we update it to a newer version of Android. And of course, Qualcomm provides security fixes to the firmware. It also provides integration of the Android operating system into its platform, but for a limited number of versions. Therefore, most manufacturers in the industry stop updating their devices wherever Google or Qualcomm stop their support. And what do we gain from our effort to maintain, from a software perspective, our phone longer? So remember the slides with all the Fairphone family, all the Fairphone models that we ever sold. This slide shows all Fairphone models that still receive software update today. And if you look at Fairphone 2, launched in 2015, is still receiving updates today. Now let's have a look at what that means on Android to do software updates. Bringing Android to a device is quite complex. It is a complex effort between multiple stakeholders. This is just the overview. Let's go more in depth. First of all, you have what we call AOSP, so the Android open source project. This is driven by Google, and Google releases source code for a new Android version. Second step, we need to ensure the SoC compatibility. SoC means system on a chip. This is the brain of your phone, full computer, processor, memory on one chip. And Qualcomm published the AOSP modifications released as open source in the Code Aurora forum, what we call the CAF. And also, of course, the proprietary code. For those part of codes, of course, licenses are required. And then the manufacturer, so us, has to do the integration. So hardware bring up for the screen, for the camera. So we take code from Qualcomm, device drivers for different components, and we get them working more or less. And this is done really, really by the manufacturer. And then we need to integrate all the requirements from the operators, so the operators like Vodafone, Orange in France, etc. We integrate everything, and then we ask for approval before shipping the software. So first of all, Google, for sure. So you need to pass several hundreds of thousands of automated tests across multiple test suites to have this approval, with some brand guideline validation. And then you have also in parallel to ask for some operators to launch their own test to have approval. So this is quite a complex process. So let's look at Fairphone 3, what we have done. So the device is released, let's say. We need now to release all the software maintenance package. And again, same story. Fairphone is responsible to integrate everything, AOSP, Qual component, etc., and ask for approval to Google and operators. At some point, Google will stop maintaining Android version. And no more security patches means that you cannot ship the certified Android again. So, what do we have to do? We need to upgrade to the next Android version. And the development process of a later upgrade is very similar of the process for the initial launch. So we need Google approval, we need operator approval. So again, the maintenance cycle starts, which is the same as before. And what will happen? Again, Google will stop supporting at some point, so you need an upgrade again. But what if the chipset vendor also stops supporting? So now, let's have a look at the overview again. So now we see that the chain is broken. Generally speaking, this is exactly where, what I said before, where software support for devices stops in the industry. So you remember the story about Fairphone 2, which is our phone since 2015 and still maintained. So how we did manage to do that. So this phone was released in 2015 with Android 5. We did Android 6 upgrade with the Qualcomm support. But after that, the chipset vendor was not supporting the chipset anymore. So what did we do? So we reuse proprietary parts from Android 6. We looked at CAFCOT, this forum where you can find open source components from the chipset vendor. So we looked at CAF code for similar SOC that did resave Android 7, because Android 7 was the first upgrade without the Qualcomm support. We took over code from the open source community, so we will see how the open source communities are important. The kernel was an important part of what we look at, and later on we take it over. We also look at all the patches from Linear Wedge for fixing user-facing issues. And Linear Wedge, if you have not heard about that, this is an Android-based operating system for Fairphone tablets, which with mostly free and open source software. And they are actually now, if I'm not mistaken, over than 300 devices like smartphones that support Linear Wedge. And we did not stop there. We did Android 9 and actually Android 10 on this phone, which will bring us to 7.5 years of software support. For every release, we do a lot of open source. We work with the communities. We have a unlockable bootloader. We open source everything that we can. We release binary blobs through agreement. And we publish also good build instructions for the community. So open source is key. Yeah, open source works. If I look at Fairphone 2, so I told you that we will reach the 7.5 years of support, but if I look at outside the official support, Common, a French electronic company, and EOS, an alternative system, are going to roll out Android 11. So it's a non-certified Android, but still, this is good to help users to keep their phone longer. And it will bring Fairphone 2 to the 8.5 years of software support, which is huge. Few words about an OS that perhaps you don't know, perhaps you know. I'm a big fan of it. This is called the Post-Market OS. So one engineer of my team is working on it. Hello, Luca. So this is a pure Linux-based OS. And I really like their approach and values. They were saying that when they launched their product, their OS, they were saying that we are sick of not receiving updates shortly after buying new phones, sick of walled gardens deeply integrated into Android and iOS. That's why they are developing this sustainable, privacy and security-focused free software mobile OS built on traditional Linux distribution. Because yes, privacy also matters, right? It's not only a matter of longevity, but having a privacy-focused operating system accessible to all is also important for us as a manufacturer. An operating system which doesn't scan, access, or track user data multiple times per day. Beyond Android updates for the Fairphone 2, we also have our own alternative Android operating system called Fairphone Open, which is exclusive for Fairphone 2. But later on for Fairphone 3, for Fairphone 4, we wanted to partner with communities to do this kind of job, because this is a huge job. And we really believe that offering an alternative operating system support the growing demand of consumers who are concerned about their personal data, who are concerned about what we call now surveillance capitalism. Okay, here we go. So I hope I really managed to demonstrate how at Fairphone we build ethical phone that last longer. I also hope that you got it from more a technical software perspective, how open source is crucial to build ethical software for phones that last longer. And yes, it is tough, but we really want to show that it is actually doable. Think about the theory of change I was introducing just at the beginning of the presentation. We want to raise awareness. This is exactly what I do today to explain the complexity about what we do. We set an example, think about Fairphone 2 and the 7.5 official years of software support to motivate entire electronic industry to act more responsibly. And I will end on this quote from Anita Roddick, who is actually the founder of Body Shop. And she was used to say that if you think you are too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the bedroom. Let's all be the annoying mosquitoes of the digital industry. Thanks.